The legend of the vampire bat, from ancient myths to modern nightmares. Have you ever sat around a campfire listening to spooky stories about vampires? These tales often involve blood-sucking creatures of the night that turn their victims into undead monsters. Did humans really see creatures like vampire bats back then? And they were blamed for a wide range of misfortunes. In his novel, Dracula, Stoker's character Renfield becomes obsessed with catching and consuming live animals, which he believes will give him supernatural powers. They appear in countless works of fiction, from novels and films to TV shows and video games. In some stories, they are portrayed as terrifying monsters that can bring death and destruction wherever they go. They are not the only animals that can do so. In fact, many other animals, including mosquitoes and ticks. But as we learn more about these fascinating creatures, we can start to separate the myths from the reality. So the next time you hear a spooky story about a vampire bat, remember that there may be more to these creatures than meets the eye, are much more likely to transmit diseases that can make us sick. So while it's important to be aware of the risks of vampire bat bites, it's also important not to let fear and misunderstanding of these creatures get the better of us. In others, they are more sympathetic creatures that are cursed to live a life of darkness and solitude. Stoker drew inspiration for this character from folklore and legend, and he used the vampire bat as a symbol of evil and the supernatural. They are the only bats in the world that feed exclusively on blood, and they have a number of unique adaptations that allow them to survive on this unusual diet. For example, their teeth are specially adapted for piercing the skin of their victims, and their saliva contains a natural anticoagulant that keeps their blood from clotting. They also have a special heat-sensing ability that allows them to find warm-blooded prey even in the dark. This portrayal of the vampire bat had a profound impact on popular culture and helped to cement the creature's place in our collective imagination, including bad harvests, droughts, and even the plague. This was likely due to the fact that vampire bats often carry diseases that can be transmitted through their bites. During the Middle Ages, when people were already terrified of vampires and other blood-sucking creatures of the night, these stories only added to the fear surrounding vampire bats. And if so, how did they react? Well, evidence suggests that humans have been telling stories about nocturnal creatures that prey on blood for thousands of years. Ancient Mesopotamian myths tell of the goddess Lilith, who takes the form of a woman by day, but transforms into a bat-like monster at night to feast on the blood of mortals. Similarly, ancient Egyptians believed that the goddess Nath was a vampire-like creature, who used her consort's blood to maintain her youth and beauty. These myths may have been inspired by actual encounters with vampire bats. As early humans began to venture into the night and encounter these strange creatures, some of the first written records of vampire bats come from ancient Greek historians, like Aristotle and Pliny the Elder, who describe small bat-like creatures that lived in caves and fed on the blood of livestock. There are also reports from ancient Mesopotamian cultures that mention blood-sucking demons that take the form of bats. While there is no way to know for sure if these reports were based on real vampire bat sightings or if they were simply the result of people's imaginations, they do show that humans have been fascinated by these creatures for centuries. But one particular creature stands out in these stories, the vampire bat. It seems almost surreal that an ordinary bat could be responsible for such terrifying legends. So how did such a frightening myth come to life? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. To understand where these myths came from, let's look at the roots of vampire bat mythology. In folklore, vampire bats were often seen as omens of death or disease. But perhaps the most influential story involving vampire bats was published by Bram Stoker in 1897. Today, vampire bats are still often seen as symbols of horror and the supernatural. But despite their terrifying reputation, vampire bats are actually fascinating creatures. It's important to remember that while vampire bats can carry diseases that are harmful to humans, from ancient myths to modern nightmares, the legend of the vampire bat has captured the human imagination for centuries. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another exciting episode. If you love learning about the natural world, don't forget to subscribe for new episodes every week. Until next time, stay curious.